Some people say, how do brands win with NFTs in 2023? Well, we might have to wait till 2024. I don't know if it's the right time or not. But here we go to the stage. We have Michael, Max, Brendan, Catie, and Sebastian. Please sit under your name if you would. That would be helpful. Or not. Just sit somewhere randomly that looks kind of like where you might be. So Michael might be at the very end, then Max, and then Bread. There you go. Thank you so much. Give them another big round of applause. They need it.
Can you hear me? Let's get this party started, right? It's the end of the day. That's right.
All sorts of pillows.
All sorts of pillows. Get comfortable here. Yeah, everyone excited? We're going to talk about how brands win with NFTs in 2023. So I'm Catie. I run a Web3 marketing and communications firm. And I'm here with a rock star team. I'm going to let them introduce themselves quickly, and then we'll get into the content.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for coming here. My name is Brendan, more commonly known as Bread. I work for the NFT now as the director of blockchain over there, having worked with Pepsi for the past year, and now I'm over there to help tokenize media.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. My name is Sebastian Oddo. I'm the director of Web3 marketing globally for MasterCard, and happy to be here.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I'm Max Comparetto. I feel like this is all my friends. Get to see everybody, or like people I work with. I work at Salesforce. I founded the Web3 Studio, which is like a go-to-market extension of a product group that's been developing for about 2 years now.
What's up, everyone? Michael Litman here. Thanks for coming when it's beautiful sunshine outside. I work at Media Monks Agency. We're a full-service agency doing all things Web3 innovation and NFTs. So obviously, I forgot that one. But we're really excited to be here and looking forward to diving into this with an amazing panel.
Absolutely. Come on, all in. Have a seat. Listen to us. So all of us have had experience in Web 2, deep experience in Web 2. I thought we could start talking about that. What are you guys kind of seeing in terms of what Web 2.0 is doing to jump into Web 3.0? Maybe you guys can just give some experience in terms of that with your backgrounds.
Yeah, sure. So I originally got into blockchain through cybersecurity program, and I'm a big advocate for blockchain tech. NFTs are something that are built on top of the tech itself. I started in blockchain with enterprise solutions, very much a Web 2 kind of way to handle things like supply chain management and handle things like just proof of trust on chain, working with the state of Colorado. And it's interesting how it's evolved over the years to where we're at almost Web 3 fully now. I feel like we're still at kind of like Web 2.95 maybe. We're getting there, And it's interesting watching Web 2 brands kind of come into it. Having worked with Pepsi for the past year, there's a lot of things that they are still looking at through a Web 2 lens. And I really believe that's kind of due to a lack of education of the space, And so as we continue to move forward in this space, I think that it's really important that we focus on, not only public education, but more internal education for these Web 3 brands as they push on and continue into Web 3.
Yeah, I think, from my perspective, our CMO was on stage this morning talking about how Web3 is just, another marketing tool out there that we could all use. For me, I used to work in sports and then, do a ton of experiential. So my lens when I think about Web3 is around experiential. So how do you use Web3 on site at events? The best use case for me that I've seen is around what Adidas is doing, which I'm really been really impressed. So like taking an NFT and going on site in an event or going online and being able to redeem something, that to me is so cool. It's a new form, and being able to own that myself is just really awesome. So I think thinking about those marketing initiatives from a MasterCard perspective is important for me, and all of our sponsorship deals and all of our marketing efforts globally. So that's what our team has been thinking about.
Cool. So, wow, whoa, this thing's powerful. All right. So no, I think the perspective I have is different, right? Like Seb works for MasterCard and he gets to see it from inside of the brand, right? Brendan worked for Pepsi, he sees it from inside of the brand. You're preparing your brands, or you did work for Pepsi, excuse me, NFT Now. Like you don't really have to prepare NFT Now for entering Web3 as a Web2 brand.
We're
like,
crushing it.
Yeah.
They get it.
Yeah, congratulations, you made it. But like, I witness a lot of brands. I like talk to everybody. I get to see what everyone's doing to try to prepare themselves. So it's an awesome purview. I've like been able to learn a lot in the last couple of years. What I see brands doing is like mobilizing in terms of enablement, like educating teams. So they're like hiring or engaging consultants in some cases to educate people across the company. Their like strategy for the last 2 years was outsource everything. Like so many brands were just like, I don't need the liability. I'm just gonna like lob this to a third party, and they're gonna own everything, including our smart contracts, including our private keys, including this, that, and the other, and we'll offload all risk and exposure to these assets to someone else. What I now see, which is great, is brands that are like preparing to own more of that, which is awesome. I think like very encouraging sign that brands are willing to take on that risk because they feel like it's worth whatever reward is on the other side of the risk. So like, I definitely see groups like strengthening in terms of their enablement capabilities, like education for their legal, compliance, regulatory risk teams, finance and accounting teams, tax professionals, et cetera. So I think that's awesome. And marketing teams are starting to think about what are our use cases, what plays could we make, and how would the tech that we have now like prepare us or ready us for those, you know, pursuing those use cases.
Well, so trying to follow up that is, you covered off quite a lot there, but I look at it from an agency perspective. So differently from a brand and from a tech vendor, I look at it more on both an internal and external education play is absolutely vital still. You know, we talked about this last year. We're still doing it this year in terms of giving brands confidence, trust, the ability to not feel like it's out of their wheelhouse, because that's where we come in. So there's still a lot to be done. We are not, I don't think we are at the Web 2.9 phase yet. I think we're still probably Web 2.6 maybe. So there's still a lot to be done, but the building blocks are being worked on right now. You know, we know the market conditions right now, and we're all here because we believe in the sort of build phase to be there for when things are really going to be picking up again. And that's what I'm most bullish about, is a lot of people have left the space. A lot of projects have left the space. A lot of brands have left the space. But the ones that are continuing and are enabling, mobilizing internally and externally, they're the ones that Seb mentioned, Adidas. This hat that I'm wearing, that's 9DCC, that's NFT enabled fashion, super interesting. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to be done, but continue to be inspired by everyone here.
Absolutely. So I think I run a marketing and PR firm, obviously, so I come from the same position as you, Michael, in terms of trying to help brands get into the space. And there are so many hurdles we just talked about, like there's legal, there's marketing, there's business, there's all of it. What do you guys think is probably the biggest hurdle in terms of bringing brands that are well-established brands into Web3? Or Web 2.5, or whatever we're trying to push right now? Like, what is the first step that we need to look at? Is it IP? Is it, I don't know, a marketing strategy? What do you guys think is the first thing?
Yeah, I jump in. I know it right off the top of my head. I know it's like
Legal.
we are not talking about, no. Guess again. One more.
Let me guess.
Accessibility.
Oh, okay. I know.
We have forgotten accessibility in every conversation. This is so important. We're building at the ground level, and we forgot about accessibility. Accessibility design and development is something that usually gets bolted on at the end. And we can't do that with Web3. We need to build it from the foundation. We need to think about, we need to be inclusive in how we're building out and designing products and bring people in with visible disabilities, invisible disabilities, to talk about what matters to them. They are an incredible market share in this world, and we've missed them. So that, to me, is the most important. Yes, legal, finance, integrity is so important, and to bring them to the table is so important, but accessibility is a must and a requirement moving forward.
When you say accessibility, do you mean like barriers to entry in terms of certain groups of people, or do you just mean like earlier today we were having lunch and we were talking about you need to have no more than 2 clicks or you're not going to get anyone into this user flow?
I'm thinking about, for example, someone who may be colorblind and it says click the blue button to proceed. You don't know what the blue button is if you're colorblind. So I think we need to think about that and build it into our design. I'm thinking about it from that perspective.
Anyone else? Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, but I also actually think we're not even there yet from an accessibility point of view. We actually need to work on UX and design, period. Like, getting a wallet, getting crypto, getting into NFTs, it is a barrier. It is a blocker for a lot of people. People are overwhelmed, and there's so many steps required. That needs to be kind of lowered to the point where my parents can sign up for an NFT. They will not do that for any level of money. My dad thinks he wants to get into Ethereum, but I said to him, no, let's hold off for a bit. So I think accessibility, yes, absolutely, but just good UX and design is so needed right now. I think probably the best example is the Rainbow Wallet. The Rainbow Wallet you can set up in minutes. Anything else requires some serious research and moving into. So I think, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I'll piggyback on that, you know, and it's funny because we talk about accessibility, and I love that analogy as far as like click the blue button, you know. What I'm a huge proponent for, you know, is education though, you know, in the space, because ultimately, even if you are colorblind but you can't read, there's no way for you to even know what the instructions are, you know, and I think that it's really important that more people start to actually understand how a wallet works and how a smart contract works, and you know, the amount of doors and possibilities that could unlock, not only from, you know, internal with brands, you know, so that maybe you can clear some of these legal hurdles and treasury hurdles, and you know, explain to them that you can hold crypto, it's okay. You really can hold crypto on your books. You don't have to worry about it, you know, and things like that. It's super important that we get the businesses educated so that then they can pass down that education to their ultimate end users.
All right, I'll give the obvious answer as the last one here. So I'll give you 2, but I'll start with the obvious, or the more obvious, which is legal. Like, a brand will never get to the point, you know, what I totally agree, super important points. A brand will never, and I view like mass adoption through the lens of brands. That's just like my purview, right? But like a brand will never get to the point where they're putting a blue button on a site where they're worried about who can read and who can't read, or they're worried about who can use this or download this, you know, memorize this seed phrase, do that, unless they get past the legal hurdles. Like, and that I think starts with like clear regulatory frameworks and guidelines that brands can adhere to, and that comes from the right people being in the right rooms in DC and other places around the world with regulators, actually like being willing to work with people instead of taking this contrarian like position to regulators, which like I totally understand. I definitely have like my opinions about government and like how effective it is in general, but like that's to me the biggest hurdle. And then from there, I would say secondarily, in addition to what you guys said, it's marketing. Like yes, I want more people to understand how a wallet works, and that it's a pairing of a public and private key, and here's what you're signing, and this is what will happen when you sign this. Know how to interpret contracts and things like that. I would love that. I don't know how realistic it is. And so like I think the marketing needs to shift, and the messaging like that's so critically focused and like zoned in on tech needs to shift. And I see like things like account abstraction and stuff like that, and that's encouraging for me.
I have a question a bit about regulation in the sense of I kind of see it as a catch-22 or a chicken and egg. Like if brands, do you guys think that it's going to have to first come from government for brands to adopt, or brands going to have to push the envelope a bit for governments to have to come up with ideas to implement to set precedent? Because I think that right now what we're dealing with, I guess maybe we're getting into touchy subjects, but politics. But I think when we're talking about regulation, we're dealing with people that are in positions that have been in it forever. They're probably quite old school. So if we wait for them to set the standard, are we never going to see change? Is it going to have to come first from brands to push that envelope, and then for regulators to have an answer? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think that absolutely the brands need to push the envelope. We have to push forward. It's this constant battle, of who's going to take the first step. And any of these major brands don't want to be the guinea pig. They have shareholders, and they've got this public image and PR and all these different things that are on the line, right? And nobody wants to be, that first company to say, like, we're doing this and we're selling NFTs and we're doing all these crypto things, and because there are no guidelines. It's still in that gray area that we're operating in. And unfortunately, I do think that we have to, though. There has to be a push amongst brands and amongst these major companies to just kind of not throw all caution to the wind, obviously. I mean, there are still things that, that brands have to abide by in order to remain brands, right? But realistically, we can't wait on regulations from government officials because, I mean, to be honest, I would put a good amount of money on the fact they're all still using, at AOL.com emails, and so getting them to understand the intricacies of Web3
Flip phones.
Flip phones, right? It's an uphill battle with regulatory. So I feel like that, as brands, we should be pushing it, and it's really encouraging to see brands like MasterCard and Salesforce providing these types of kind of frameworks for brands to feel more comfortable pushing that envelope a little bit. But until we get recognition from regulators that like, oh, hey, maybe these brands actually know what they're doing, I think it's going to be a difficult journey.
Brands will always be standing in front of the cornfield without a maze being sort of carved out yet. When innovation, that's innovation, right? So whether it's Web3, Web4, some other AI, or whatever technology that comes out tomorrow, brands will be faced with that cornfield and have to decide, do I carve it myself and create internal policies that work for us and create safety for our customers and create safety for our employees? Or do we wait? Most brands that I've done business with or have been part of have decided to forge forward. But they've done it in a safe and compliant way that feels comfortable to their customers and their clients. So I just think like we can't assume that the rules are always going to be there for us to follow. We have to create our own, and while also following what's out there.
Yeah.
I just got to tell you, this was like not a planned question, and that was a phenomenal question, Catie. I think, yes, I agree. Like brands will need to push the envelope. Precedent in a legal setting or context is always like, judiciaries like looking back on things that have happened and saying, this is how we feel about this, and moving forward, this is how we rule on this, and moving forward, that's the precedent. Like this is what will guide future decisioning in similar like settings and contexts. Like when these circumstances are true, this is how we'll rule on this. This is how we view this. So yes, somebody's got to push the envelope. Do I know for certain that it will be big brands, with the exception of a couple? Seb, thank you. I don't know. That's tough. I think it'll probably more likely come from Web3 startups who are way more like, or less risk averse and like willing to push the envelope and forge forward. and then precedent will be set, and brands will have the clarity that they need to make decisions on similar ideas.
I've always wanted to say that I plead the fifth as a Brit in the US, but I do think that innovation, by its definition, like Seb was saying, is about pushing boundaries, doing new things, and then sort of asking for permission, or is it seeking forgiveness? So yeah, it's seeking forgiveness rather than asking for permission. So I feel like that is what's happening in a lot of these spaces. You know, we're obviously still waiting for regulation in crypto, which is going to come, but when? And to what end? What is that going to change? There is still going to be bad actors out there, regardless of regulation. So that, I think, is the remit of forward-thinking brands and agencies that want to be pushing the envelope in any industry. So I think regulation will come, but I think things have to happen even before that regulation comes, from an innovation standpoint. And then when that regulation comes, maybe the more risk-averse brands, agencies will want to dive in more once that regulation comes. So I think it's a kind of double-edged sword, and I hope innovation happens before regulation.
Yeah, I agree. I heard a really good podcast. I forgot the name of it now, but it was about LVMH or LVH, whatever. And it was about how in World War II, they basically went against the grain and decided to create fashion that was not in line with, like, you know, the Third Reich and all this stuff, and it created this big movement. So it's kind of like we're in that new paradigm, in the sense of, like, brands have this opportunity right now to create a new narrative that's completely against the grain, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. In that same vein, there have been brands that have done really well and done good things in Web3. Why do you think they've been successful? I mean, Adidas, whatever, however you want to pronounce it, has done one of them. But what has been kind of the defining factor that's made them successful? What do you guys think?
I could go first. I personally love what Time Magazine has done from the beginning. Time Magazine immediately, brought in the artists to the community. They started listening to the artists. They started creating community spaces for the artists and giving the artists the opportunity to have that spotlight. And that means a lot to me, to see a brand do that instead of shining above them. And we recently, this morning, our CMO announced that we launched our first NFT where we're shining the spotlight on artists and giving them education, like he said, about how do you educate and onboard. And we're doing that with musicians and artists in the community. So I personally think Time Magazine, their timepieces, because of that spotlight on the artist.
I'll second that. I'm an advisor at Time, and I love their team. So shout out to Maya and Keith and everybody. And Seb, I love what you guys are doing too. Obviously, I'm like a fanboy over here. But no, I would say, like, what those brands seem to have done well is they seem to understand themselves, in the sense that they know who they attract and what attracts those individuals or community members to their brand. So Time, just from like knowing what they were thinking about, identified early on that they're a visual brand, and that the visuals were not theirs, they were artists. Like, photography is art, right? Art is art, like in all mediums, et cetera. And so they said, all right, cool. How can we empower these people? Like, Web3 is talked about as this tech that empowers, like, underrepresented, underprivileged, like, soft voices, right? And it raises and lifts them up. And Time had a platform with their brand and their product to essentially provide that platform and amplify the voices of these individuals. And so that's what they did well, right? And obviously there's timing, and maybe if you go back and you try to do that now, it's not the same. You're not making $10 million a year. You're not making at Adidas $23 million, overnight. But I think that's what it was. And then after the initial moment of identifying, like, showing that they understand who they are and who they attract and what attracts those individuals to the brand, they also then did a great job of curating their community. So they weren't afraid to tell someone, sell your shit, I could not care less if you're in this community or not, the way you're acting right now. You're not in line with our core values. They like upheld their core values, and they didn't let other people tell them who they should be just because they're now entering this Web3 space. And I think too much people like in the brand space cater to the loud voices, the squeaky wheels that aren't really adding consistent, sustainable value.
I think we're out of time, so I'm gonna defer to the guys that are coming over and hounding us. So thanks.
We're the bouncers.
Let's hear it for our panel.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
They were great. That was awesome.